Admiral Zephyr Caney stood on the bridge of the ESS Defiance, watching the swirling blue marble of Earth grow larger in the viewport. After 30 years of deep space exploration and first contact missions, she was finally coming home. But the Earth she saw now was different from the one she had left behind. Massive orbital defense platforms ringed the planet like a crown of thorns. Each station bristled with weapons that could crack a moon in half. Energy shields shimmered between them, creating an impenetrable barrier around humanity's birth world. This was not the peaceful Earth of her childhood memories. "Admiral, we're receiving priority transmission from Earth Command," reported Lieutenant Torres from the communication station. His voice carried a tension that made Caney's stomach clench. "Put it through." "Lieutenant," the main screen flickered to life, revealing the weathered face of Fleet Admiral Harrison Cross. Caney had served under Cross during the Proxima campaign, and she had never seen him look so grim. "Zephyr," Cross began without preamble, "thank the stars you made it back. We need every experienced commander we can get." "Sir, what's happening?" "The orbital defenses around Earth. I've never seen anything like them." Cross's expression darkened further. 3 months ago, we made contact with what we thought was a peaceful alien confederation. They called themselves the Valdris Empire. At first, they seemed interested in trade and cultural exchange. We were excited to finally meet a truly advanced civilization. Caney felt a chill run down her spine. She had encountered enough alien species during her exploration missions to know that first impressions could be deadly wrong. "The Valdris sent an envoy fleet to our solar system," Cross continued. 50 ships, each one the size of a small moon. They claimed it was a diplomatic gesture, a show of their empire's might and prosperity. We welcomed them with open arms. The Admiral paused, his hands clenching into fists. It was a reconnaissance mission. They weren't here to negotiate. They were here to assess our defenses, our technology, our population. Within hours of arriving, their envoys began making demands. "What kind of demands?" Caney asked, though she already suspected the answer. "Submission. Complete and total submission. They wanted Earth to become a vassal world under their empire. They offered us the privilege of serving as their mining colony, harvesting resources for their expansion across the galaxy. In return, they promised not to exterminate our entire species." Caney's jaw tightened. She had seen this pattern before on a smaller scale. Some alien species viewed humans as nothing more than useful animals, good for labor but not worthy of respect or autonomy. "Obviously, we refused," Cross said. The Valdris response was immediate and devastating. They attacked our outer colonies without warning. Titan Station, the research facility on Europa, the mining operations in the asteroid belt, all gone within 48 hours. The screen shifted to show recordings from the attacks. Caney watched in horror as massive Valdris warships reduced human installations to floating debris with casual efficiency. The aliens' weapons were beyond anything in Earth's arsenal. "How many casualties?" she asked quietly. 2 million civilians, dead in the first wave." Cross's voice was barely controlled rage. But that wasn't the worst part. After destroying our facilities, they transmitted a message to every human settlement in the galaxy. They gave us 1 month to surrender unconditionally, or they would return with their full battle fleet to sterilize every world humanity had touched. Caney stared at the tactical display showing the current positions of Earth's scattered colonies. Dozens of worlds, hundreds of stations, millions of human lives spread across 100 light-years of space, all of them now under a death sentence. "Sir, what are our options? Have we attempted to negotiate?" Cross shook his head. "We tried everything. Diplomatic channels offering tribute, even proposing limited autonomy agreements. The Valdris aren't interested in compromise. Their empire has conquered over 300 species in the past millennium. To them, we're just another primitive race to be absorbed or eliminated. What about our allies? The Centauri Republic, the Kepler Federation? They're all terrified," Cross admitted. "The Valdris Empire spans half the galaxy. No single species has ever successfully resisted them. Our allies sympathize with our situation, but they won't risk their own worlds for us." Caney studied the defensive positions around Earth. "These orbital platforms, the shield grid, how long can we hold out? Against their advanced scouts? Maybe a week, but intelligence suggests their main battle fleet consists of over 10,000 vessels, each one more powerful than anything we've ever built. When they arrive, our defenses won't even slow them down." The weight of humanity's situation settled over Caney like a suffocating blanket. Earth stood alone against an empire that had crushed civilizations far older and more advanced. The logical choice was surrender, accepting slavery in exchange for survival. But something burned in Kane's chest, a fire that had been kindled during her years exploring the void between stars. Humanity had crawled out of caves and reached for the stars through sheer stubborn determination. They had survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and the harsh realities of space exploration. They had never bowed to any force in the universe. "Admiral," she said slowly, "there's something you should know about what I discovered during my deep space mission." Cross leaned forward. "Go on." "We found ruins, sir. Ancient ruins on a world 50 light-years beyond the Kepler systems. The archaeological team spent 2 years studying them. They belonged to a species called the Architects, a race that vanished over 1,000,000 years ago. What does this have to do with our current situation? Kaney pulled up her mission files on her personal datapad. The Architects left behind records, sir. Historical archives that detail the rise and fall of galactic civilizations. According to their data, the Valdris Empire isn't the first to attempt galactic domination. There have been others, dozens of them over the past 10 million years. Cross's eyes sharpened with interest. And what happened to these previous empires? They all fell, sir. Every single one. Not to external conquest, but to internal collapse. The Architects discovered a pattern. When an empire grows too large, too confident in its own invincibility, it becomes vulnerable to a single, perfectly timed strike at its core. You're talking about their homeworld? Kaney nodded. According to the Architect records, the Valdris home system is called Nexus Prime. It's the administrative heart of their entire empire. Every major decision, every military campaign, every economic policy flows through that single system. Cross sat back in his chair, his mind clearly racing. You're suggesting we attack their homeworld? Zephyr, that's suicide. Even if we could somehow get past their defenses, what could we possibly do against an entire system fortified by a 1,000,000-year-old empire? Kaney smiled grimly. That's where the second part of the Architect discovery comes in, sir. They didn't just leave behind historical records. They left behind blueprints. The secure briefing room deep beneath the Pentagon buzzed with tension as Admiral Kaney spread out the Architect blueprints across the holographic display table. Fleet Admiral Cross studied the complex schematics with growing amazement, while Earth's top scientists and engineers leaned in closer to examine the impossible technology. What you're looking at, Kaney explained to the assembled group, is the design for something the Architects called a reality anchor. According to their records, it's a weapon capable of destabilizing the fundamental forces that hold matter together. Dr. Sarah Chen, Earth's leading physicist, shook her head in disbelief. "Admiral, these equations, they're describing controlled manipulation of the strong nuclear force. If this technology actually works, it could theoretically unravel the atomic bonds in anything within its field of effect." "Theoretically," emphasized General Marcus Webb, the head of Earth's military research division. "But can we actually build this thing? And more importantly, can we build it before the Valdris fleet arrives?" Kaney activated another section of the display, showing detailed manufacturing specifications. The Architects designed their technology to be reproducible by less advanced civilizations. Most of the components can be fabricated using materials and processes we already have. The main challenge is the power source. "What kind of power are we talking about?" asked Cross. Dr. Chen ran rapid calculations on her tablet. "Based on these specifications, we'd need the equivalent energy output of a small star, concentrated into a device no larger than a space station. It's theoretically possible using antimatter containment, but the scale is staggering." Chief Engineer Rodriguez whistled low. "We'd have to convert our entire antimatter production capability. Every facility in the solar system would need to work at maximum capacity for weeks, just to generate enough fuel for a single shot." "One shot," Cross mused. "And if we miss, or if the weapon doesn't work as advertised, humanity is finished." Kaney nodded grimly. "It's a desperate gamble, sir. But consider our alternatives. We can surrender and become slaves, hoping the Valdris keep their word about sparing our lives. We can fight conventionally and be exterminated in a matter of hours. Or we can take this one chance to strike at the heart of their empire." General Webb studied the tactical implications. "Even if we could build this reality anchor, how would we deliver it to their homeworld? The Valdris will have their core systems defended by thousands of ships." "That's where the second part of the plan comes in," Kaney said, activating a new section of the display. The architect records contained detailed intelligence about Valdris society and military structure. Their empire is built on absolute hierarchical control. Every decision flows down from the Nexus Prime system, and every piece of information flows back up. She highlighted specific sections of the alien intelligence data. The Valdris use a network of quantum communication arrays to maintain instant contact across their empire. These arrays are incredibly efficient, but they have one critical vulnerability. They're all synchronized to a master control node located in the Nexus Prime system. Dr. Chen's eyes widened with understanding. If someone could access that master node, they could theoretically send false information through the entire network. Exactly, Caney confirmed. We could make the Valdris fleet believe they're receiving orders from their high command, when in reality, we're controlling their communications. Cross leaned back in his chair, processing the implications. You want to hack their entire military communication network and send them false orders? Not just false orders, sir. We send them home. We make them believe there's a crisis in the core systems that requires the immediate return of all military assets. While their fleet is racing back to defend Nexus Prime, we follow them with our reality anchor. General Webb frowned. But how do we access their quantum communication network in the first place? That kind of intrusion would require physical access to their systems. Caney smiled coldly. Remember, they're still planning to arrive here in 3 weeks with their main battle fleet. When they do, they'll establish a command post in our solar system to coordinate the final assault on Earth. That command post will need to maintain communication with their home systems. You want to capture one of their command ships. Cross realized. A surgical strike during the confusion of their initial arrival. We take their command vessel intact, access their communication systems, and turn their own network against them. Dr. Chen was already running calculations. The timing would have to be perfect. We'd need to complete the reality anchor, capture their command ship, hack their network, and transmit false orders all within a narrow window of opportunity. And then, added Chief Engineer Rodriguez, we'd have to somehow get close enough to their homeworld to deploy the weapon before they realize what's happening. The room fell silent as everyone contemplated the magnitude of the task. They were talking about infiltrating a million-year-old empire, stealing their most advanced technology, and using it to destroy their capital system. The plan was so audacious it bordered on madness. There's something else, Caney said quietly. Something I haven't mentioned yet. Cross raised an eyebrow. More good news? The architect records indicate that when a reality anchor is detonated, it doesn't just destroy its target. The energy release creates a cascading effect that destabilizes quantum communication networks across several hundred light years. If we succeed in destroying Nexus Prime, we'll also cripple the Valdris Empire's ability to coordinate their remaining forces. Their outlying territories would be cut off from central command, Webb realized. Individual systems might surrender or even rebel against the Empire. Or they might band together and come looking for revenge, Cross pointed out grimly. Caney nodded. It's a risk, sir. But without their command structure and communication network, the Valdris would be fighting as scattered groups instead of a unified empire. It would give other species a chance to resist, maybe even form an alliance against their former oppressors. Dr. Chen looked up from her calculations. Admiral, I've been running simulations based on the architect's specifications. If we start immediate production using every facility in the solar system, we can complete the reality anchor in 18 days. That gives us a 5-day window to execute the rest of the plan. 18 days to build a weapon that could theoretically destroy a solar system, Rodriguez muttered. No pressure at all. Cross stood up, his decision made. Admiral Caney, I'm giving you full authorization to proceed with this operation. Codename Final Command. You'll have unlimited access to resources and personnel. Sir, I'll need a crew for the mission. Volunteers only, because this is almost certainly a one-way trip. How many people are we talking about? A skeleton crew of 200. Just enough to operate the reality anchor and a fast attack ship capable of getting us to Nexus Prime. Cross nodded solemnly. I'll put out the call myself. Any volunteers for humanity's last desperate gamble? He paused, looking around the room at the faces of Earth's best and brightest. Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to attempt something that has never been done in galactic history. We're going to teach a million-year-old empire that some species refuse to kneel. As the meeting broke up and teams rushed to begin the impossible task of building a weapon from alien blueprints, Caney remained behind to study the tactical displays. In 3 weeks, the Valdris battle fleet would arrive expecting to find a broken, desperate humanity ready to surrender. Instead, they would find Earth's final command to the galaxy: do not cross Terran space. The construction of the reality anchor began immediately across 17 different facilities throughout the solar system. Admiral Caney watched from the observation deck of Luna Station as massive fabrication arrays worked around the clock, assembling components that defied human understanding of physics. "Progress report," she requested from Chief Engineer Rodriguez, who had been living on coffee and determination for the past 10 days. "We're on schedule, Admiral, but barely. The antimatter containment vessel is the bottleneck. The precision required is beyond anything we've ever attempted. We're talking about tolerances measured in individual atoms." Through the viewport, Caney could see the skeletal framework of humanity's last hope taking shape. The reality anchor didn't look like a weapon of unimaginable destruction. It resembled a massive metallic flower, with delicate petals that would unfold to focus impossible energies into a single devastating pulse. "What about the volunteer crews?" she asked. 2,000 applications for 200 positions, Rodriguez replied with a sad smile. "Turns out a lot of people are willing to die for humanity's freedom." Caney had spent the past week interviewing volunteers personally. Each conversation had been heartbreaking. Scientists who would never see their research completed, engineers with young families, soldiers who understood that this mission meant abandoning Earth forever. Yet every single one of them had looked her in the eye and said the same thing: "When do we leave?" "Admiral," came a voice from behind them. Lieutenant Torres approached with a worried expression. "We're receiving a priority transmission from the outer system monitoring stations." Caney's blood chilled. "The Valdris?" "Yes, ma'am. Long-range sensors have detected the leading edge of their battle fleet. They're 3 days early. The construction schedule had been built around the assumption that they had exactly 18 days. Now they had 15, and the reality anchor was still missing critical components. "Get me Admiral Cross immediately," Caney ordered. Within minutes, Cross's image appeared on the communication screen, his face reflecting the same grim realization. "Zephyr, tell me we can accelerate the construction timeline." "Negative, sir. We need every hour we planned for. The antimatter systems alone require 48 hours of calibration once assembly is complete." Cross rubbed his temples. "Options? We buy time the old-fashioned way," Caney said. "Earth's orbital defense grid wasn't built just for show. We engage the Valdris advanced scouts and make them think they're facing the full extent of our resistance. That's suicide, Admiral. Our weapons can't even scratch their armor." "They don't need to scratch their armor, sir. They just need to convince the Valdris that we're putting up the expected fight. Meanwhile, we continue construction and hope they don't realize what we're actually building." The next 72 hours became a carefully choreographed dance of deception and desperation. Earth's defense platforms engaged the Valdris scout fleet in running battles throughout the outer solar system. Human ships fought with calculated fury, inflicting just enough damage to seem dangerous while avoiding any actions that might prompt the aliens to investigate Luna Station more closely. Admiral Sarah Martinez commanded the defense fleet from the ESS Excalibur, leading her ships in seemingly desperate holding actions while actually following a carefully planned script. Every engagement was designed to draw Valdris' attention away from the moon and toward the apparent last stand around Earth. "Valdris command ship is moving to establish orbit around Mars," Martinez reported during one of the brief communication windows. "They're setting up exactly where our intelligence predicted." From her position aboard the stealth ship ESS Phantom, Caney watched the alien command vessel through passive sensors. The ship was a kilometer long and bristled with technology that made it look more like a floating city than a warship. According to the architect records, it would contain the quantum communication array they needed to access. "Begin. Final preparations for the capture." "Mission," she ordered, her hand-picked boarding. "Team." The team consisted of 50 of humanity's most elite special forces soldiers, each equipped with adaptive camouflage systems and weapons designed to function in zero atmosphere. Their mission was simple in concept and terrifying in execution: board a hostile alien vessel, fight their way to the communication center, and somehow capture it intact. Major Elena Vasquez, the team leader, Ran final equipment checks while studying the alien ship's architecture. Admiral, we're as ready as we'll ever be. But I have to ask, what happens if they detect us during the approach? Then the entire plan fails and humanity becomes extinct, Caney replied matter-of-factly. No pressure, Vasquez grinned fiercely. Just the way I like it, ma'am. The assault began during the height of a major engagement between human and Valdris forces near Jupiter. While the aliens were focused on crushing Admiral Martinez's seemingly desperate defense, the Phantom slipped through their sensor net using every stealth technology humanity had developed. Caney watched the distance close between her ship and the Valdris command vessel. At 5 kilometers, they would be within the aliens' detection threshold. At 1 kilometer, they would begin the final approach using individual assault pods. 4.8 kilometers and closing, reported the pilot. No indication they've detected us. 3 kilometers. Still clear. 1.2 kilometers. Launching assault pods now. 50 small craft, each containing a single soldier, detached from the Phantom and streaked toward the alien ship. The pods were designed to look like debris from the ongoing battle, their heat signatures masked and their approach vectors randomized. Pods away, Vasquez reported over the tactical channel, initiating boarding procedures. The assault pods struck the Valdris command ship's hull and immediately began cutting through the outer armor using molecular disruptors. Within seconds, the elite soldiers were inside the alien vessel, moving through corridors that had never been designed for human occupation. Multiple contacts, came Vasquez's tense voice. Valdris crew responding to the breach. Engaging now. The battle inside the command ship was brief but violent. The Valdris were individually larger and stronger than humans, but they had never faced opponents who fought with such desperate determination. Human weapons designed specifically to penetrate alien armor proved devastatingly effective in close quarters. Communication center located, Vasquez reported 20 minutes into the assault. Heavy resistance, but we're breaking through. How much time do you need? Caney asked. Give me 10 minutes to secure the area and another 20 for our tech specialist to interface with their systems. But they didn't have 30 minutes. The Valdris had finally realized that their command ship was under attack, and reinforcements were converging on their position from throughout the solar system. Admiral, came an urgent transmission from Admiral Cross back on Earth. Valdris reinforcements are moving to assist their command ship. You have maybe 15 minutes before they arrive in overwhelming force. Caney made the decision that would haunt her for the rest of her life. Major Vasquez, you have 10 minutes to complete the mission and extract. After that, we abandon the position whether you're finished or not. Understood, Admiral. We'll get it done. 8 minutes later, Specialist Chen's voice crackled over the communication system. I'm in their network. Downloading their communication protocols now. Holy God, the scope of their empire. Admiral, there are over 10,000 inhabited systems under Valdris control. Can you send the false orders? Affirmative. Transmitting recall commands to their entire battle fleet. They should receive the message as coming directly from Nexus Prime Command Authority. Extraction now, Caney ordered. The assault team fought their way back to their extraction points while the reality anchor's final components clicked into place aboard Luna Station. By the time Valdris reinforcements arrived at their command ship, the boarding party had vanished back into space, leaving behind only the quantum echoes of false orders spreading across the galaxy. Across the Valdris Empire, fleet commanders received urgent messages from their highest authority. Return immediately to defend Nexus Prime from an unknown threat. Within hours, the massive battle fleet that had come to crush humanity was turning around and racing home to defend their capital system. They had no idea they were being followed. The ESS Retribution was unlike any ship humanity had ever built. Constructed around the reality anchor itself, the vessel resembled a massive cathedral of metal and energy, its hull designed to contain forces that could theoretically unmake matter itself. Admiral Caney stood on the bridge watching as the final pre-flight systems came online. All departments report ready for departure, announced Commander Sarah Blake, Caney's hand-picked second in command. Engineering confirms the reality anchor is stable, and the antimatter containment systems are functioning within normal parameters. Caney nodded, though normal parameters was a relative term when dealing with technology that bent the laws of physics. Navigation, plot our course to follow the Valdris fleet. Maximum stealth configuration. Aye, Admiral. Estimated travel time to Nexus Prime, 14 days. 14 days to cross half the galaxy, while trailing behind the most powerful military force in known space. The Retribution would need to maintain perfect stealth while keeping pace with ships whose technology was centuries ahead of anything Earth could build. Dr. Chen, what's the status on our quantum entanglement communicator? Caney asked. Functioning perfectly, Admiral. We'll maintain real-time contact with Earth throughout the mission. Dr. Chen paused, her expression growing solemn. Admiral Cross wanted me to relay a message. Earth's defense fleet has withdrawn to maximum defensive positions. If we fail, they estimate they can hold out for perhaps 6 hours before the planet falls. The weight of humanity's future pressed down on everyone aboard the Retribution. 200 volunteers carrying the hopes of 10 billion souls, racing toward a confrontation that would determine whether humans remained free or became extinct. Signal from Fleet Admiral Cross, Admiral, reported Communications Officer Torres. The main screen activated, showing Cross aboard the ESS Defiance in Earth's shadow. Behind him, Caney could see the blue curve of humanity's homeworld, still beautiful despite the orbital weapons platforms that now surrounded it. Zephyr, Cross began, you're about to enter hyperspace beyond our ability to communicate using conventional methods. Before you go, I want you to know that every human being in the galaxy is proud of what you're attempting. Sir, we'll complete the mission. I know you will, but just in case. Cross held up a small data crystal. I've recorded messages from Earth, families saying goodbye, children singing songs, ordinary people living their lives in the shadow of extinction. I want you to remember what you're fighting for out there. The crystal materialized in the ship's databanks through quantum transmission. Caney found herself blinking back unexpected tears as she imagined the courage it had taken for families to record farewell messages for loved ones who might never return. Admiral Cross, she said formally, please relay to Earth that the crew of the ESS Retribution considers it an honor to serve humanity in this hour. Tell them that we go not as conquerors but as guardians of human freedom. Godspeed, Admiral. Earth out. The hyperspace jump began with a sensation unlike anything Caney had ever experienced. The reality anchor's exotic energy fields interacted, with the ship's faster-than-light drive in ways that made space itself seem to bend and twist around them. For a moment, she could have sworn she saw the fundamental structure of the universe laid bare, patterns of force and matter that no human eyes were meant to witness. Then they were in hyperspace, racing across the galaxy at velocities that reduced stars to streaks of light. The Valdris fleet was somewhere ahead of them, following recall orders that they believed had come from their own high command. Long-range sensors confirm the Valdris fleet is maintaining course for Nexus Prime, reported Lieutenant Palmer from the sensor station. They're traveling in standard formation, apparently unaware of our presence. The journey through hyperspace became a test of nerves and endurance. Every hour brought them closer to the heart of an empire that had conquered hundreds of worlds. The crew maintained constant vigilance, knowing that detection would mean instant annihilation. On the 7th day, they encountered something unexpected. Admiral, sensors are detecting debris fields ahead, Palmer announced. Multiple ship signatures, but they're not Valdris design. Put it on screen. The main display showed the wreckage of a massive space battle. Hundreds of destroyed vessels drifted through space, their hulls bearing the markings of a dozen different alien species. Some of the ships were larger than Earth's biggest space stations. Analysis indicates this battle occurred approximately 6 months ago, Dr. Chen reported after studying the debris. Based on the weapon signatures, this was a revolt against Valdris authority. The rebels lost. Commander Blake studied the tactical display with professional interest. Look at the formation patterns. These ships fought with coordination and strategy. This wasn't a desperate uprising. This was a planned rebellion with significant military assets. Caney felt a spark of hope. They're not the first species to resist the Valdris Empire. There might be others out there, waiting for an opportunity to strike back. Admiral, Palmer said urgently, I'm detecting active signals from one of the larger rebel ships. Faint, but definitely artificial in origin. Survivors? Possible. The ship appears to be heavily damaged, but might still have minimal life support. Caney faced a difficult decision. Investigating the rebel ship would delay their mission and risk exposure to Valdris patrols. But if there were survivors from a successful resistance movement, their intelligence could be invaluable. Take us in for a closer look. Minimal power signature, passive sensors only. The ESS Retribution approached the damaged vessel carefully. The ship was enormous, easily 10 times the size of their own vessel, but its hull was torn open in multiple places and its weapon systems were completely destroyed. I'm reading life signs, Palmer confirmed. Approximately 30 survivors in what appears to be an emergency shelter deep within the ship's core. Any indication what species they are? Negative, but the ship's design suggests they're technologically advanced. Their weapon systems, while destroyed, appear to have been more sophisticated than our own. Caney made her decision. Prepare a boarding party. If these beings fought the Valdris and survived, we need to know what they learned. 20 minutes later, Caney herself led a small team through the airlock into the damaged alien vessel. The corridors were filled with emergency lighting and the smell of recycled air that had been stretched far beyond its limits. The survivors were unlike any species humanity had encountered before. They were tall and graceful, with silvery skin and eyes that seemed to hold depths of ancient wisdom. Their leader, who identified himself as Commander Thane of the Ethereal Coalition, greeted the humans with surprise and hope. Humans, Thane said in accented but understandable English, apparently having learned the language from Valdris intelligence files. We did not expect to encounter your species so far from your home systems. Are you here to surrender to the Valdris as well? Quite the opposite, Caney replied. We're here to destroy them. Thane's large eyes widened with disbelief. Destroy the Valdris Empire? With one ship? Forgive my skepticism, but my fleet of 800 vessels could not achieve such a goal. Tell me about your rebellion. Over the next hour, Thane explained how the Ethereal Coalition had united 50 different species in an attempt to overthrow Valdris rule. Their rebellion had lasted 3 years and scored significant victories, before ultimately failing, when the Empire recalled its scattered forces for a coordinated counterattack. The Valdris weakness is their centralized command structure, Thane confirmed. But their strength is also their centralized command structure. When they unite their forces, no conventional military can stand against them. What if their command structure was eliminated entirely? Caney asked. You mean destroy Nexus Prime itself? Thane shook his head. Impossible. The system is defended by over 5,000 warships and planetary defense networks that can destroy fleets before they reach weapons range. Caney smiled grimly. Not if those 5,000 warships believe they're supposed to let us through. She quickly explained the human plan, showing Thane the technical specifications for the reality anchor and the intelligence they had gathered about Valdris communication networks. By the time she finished, the alien commander was staring at her with something approaching awe. Your species is either brilliantly courageous or completely insane. Probably both, Caney admitted. The question is, will you help us? Thane looked at his surviving crew members, 30 beings who represented the last remnants of a failed rebellion. Commander, if you succeed, what happens to the Valdris territories after their command structure collapses? Chaos, probably. But chaos gives other species a chance to reclaim their freedom. And if you fail? Then we all die together, and the Valdris continue their expansion until they control the entire galaxy. Thane was quiet for a long moment, then stood with renewed determination. The Ethereal Coalition pledges its support to this mission. My surviving crew and I will accompany you to Nexus Prime, as the combined human-alien crew prepared for the final phase of their journey. Caney couldn't help but reflect on the irony. Humanity's first true alliance with an alien species was being forged in the shadow of mutual extinction, united by the desperate hope that freedom was worth any price. The Nexus Prime system appeared on the Retribution sensors like a jewel crafted by gods. 5 planets orbited a massive golden star, each world surrounded by orbital habitats that housed trillions of beings from across the galaxy. The system's beauty was matched only by its terrifying military presence. Sensor analysis complete, Admiral, reported Lieutenant Palmer, his voice tight with tension. I'm counting over 8,000 Valdris warships in defensive positions throughout the system. Each one is larger and more heavily armed than our entire ship. Admiral Caney studied the tactical display with Commander Thane at her side. The ethereal coalition leader had proven invaluable during their approach, his knowledge of Valdris military doctrine helping them avoid several patrol routes that could have ended their mission before it began. The central planet is Nexus Prime itself, Thane explained, pointing to a massive world surrounded by rings of defensive stations. Population approximately 50 billion, all of them either Valdris leadership caste or administrative personnel from conquered species. The planetary shields alone could withstand the combined firepower of 100 fleets. What about those other planets? Asked Commander Blake. Military academies, research facilities, and industrial complexes. Each one heavily defended, each one critical to the Empire's continued operation. Thane paused, his expression grim. Admiral Caney, even with your reality anchor, I do not see how we can penetrate their defenses. Caney activated the communication systems. Dr. Chen, what's our status on the false command protocols? Still transmitting perfectly, Admiral. As far as the Valdris fleet knows, we're an authorized supply convoy delivering critical materials to Nexus Prime. The quantum signature matches their own communication networks exactly. And they're buying it? So far, we've been challenged twice by patrol vessels, and both times our automated responses satisfied their security protocols. But Admiral, this deception won't hold up to close inspection. If they decide to board us or scan us directly, they'll discover what we really are. The plan had always been desperate, but seeing the scale of Valdris defenses made it seem truly impossible. How could one ship, even carrying a reality anchor, hope to survive long enough to deploy the weapon against a target protected by thousands of the galaxy's most advanced warships? Admiral, came an urgent voice from the communication station. We're receiving a priority transmission from the Valdris fleet. Caney's blood chilled. Put it through. The main screen activated, showing a Valdris military commander whose scarred face spoke of centuries of combat experience. The alien's forearms moved in ritual gestures as he spoke in the Empire's traditional formal language. Commander Thane translated quietly. He's ordering us to take position in the outer system defensive grid. Apparently there are reports of unknown vessels approaching Nexus Prime. Unknown vessels? Blake asked. What could they be talking about? Their answer came from the sensor station. Admiral, long-range detectors are picking up massive hyperspace signatures approaching the system. Whatever's coming, it's big. The sensors revealed the truth within minutes. 3 separate fleets, each consisting of hundreds of ships, were converging on Nexus Prime from different directions. The vessel designs were unlike anything in the Valdris registry. It's the Resistance, Thane breathed, his voice filled with wonder. The remaining free species have finally united for a coordinated assault on the Empire's heart. Caney watched as the first rebel fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the system's edge. The ships were a patchwork of different technologies and design philosophies, representing dozens of species that had somehow escaped Valdris conquest. Their coordination was impressive, but their chances against the assembled might of the Empire seemed minimal. Admiral, Dr. Chen reported, the Valdris are activating their full defensive protocols. Every ship in the system is moving to intercept the rebel fleets. This is our chance, Caney realized. While they're focused on the external threat, we can move closer to Nexus Prime itself. Or we could help the rebels, suggested Major Vasquez from the tactical station. Combined forces might have a better chance than separate operations. Caney faced an agonizing decision. The rebel fleets represented the last hope of dozens of species fighting for their freedom. If she abandoned them to focus on her own mission, thousands of brave beings would die. But if she revealed the Retribution's presence to help them, the surprise attack on Nexus Prime would be compromised. Commander Thane, she said quietly, what would the Coalition want us to do? The ethereal leader was silent for a long moment, watching as the first battle groups began to engage at the system's periphery. The greater good demands sacrifice, Admiral. The Coalition would want you to complete your mission, even if it means allowing these fleets to die as a distraction. But Caney could see in his eyes that the decision was tearing him apart. Those were his people out there, the last survivors of species that had dared to resist the Empire's tyranny. Communications, Caney ordered. Open a channel to the lead rebel fleet. Encrypted burst transmission. Admiral, that will reveal our position, Blake warned. I know, but I'm not going to let them die without giving them a chance. She activated the communication system. This is Admiral Zephyr Caney of the Earth vessel ESS Retribution. We are Allied forces carrying a planet-killer weapon, requesting coordination for joint assault on Nexus Prime. The response came back almost immediately. The voice belonged to a being whose species Caney didn't recognize, but whose determination was unmistakable. Admiral Caney, this is Fleet Commander Narak of the Free Worlds Alliance. We have been monitoring Valdris communications and are aware of your approach. How can we assist your mission? We need a clear path to Nexus Prime itself. Our weapon requires close proximity to the primary planet for maximum effectiveness. Understood. We will create a corridor through their defensive lines. Be ready to move when we give the signal. What followed was the largest space battle in galactic history. 3 rebel fleets representing the combined military might of over 100 species launched a coordinated assault on the Valdris defensive positions. The battle raged across the entire star system, with weapons that could shatter moons being fired at velocities approaching the speed of light. The rebels fought with the fury of beings who had nothing left to lose. Their ships dove into Valdris formations with suicidal courage, trading their lives for tactical advantages that would help create openings in the enemy lines. Admiral, Palmer reported, the rebels have breached the middle defensive ring. They're opening a corridor toward Nexus Prime, but it won't last long. All ahead full, Caney ordered. Take us through that gap now. The Retribution raced through the chaos of the space battle, using the confusion and the rebels' sacrifice to slip past Valdris defensive positions. Around them, massive warships exchanged fire that could have vaporized small moons, while the combined fleets of free species fought desperately to keep the corridor open. 5 minutes to optimal firing position, Dr. Chen announced from the Reality Anchor control station. All systems are green and the weapon is charging to full power. Admiral, came Commander Narak's voice over the communication system. Our forces are taking heavy casualties. We cannot maintain this assault much longer. Through the viewport, Caney could see the rebel fleets beginning to falter. For every Valdris ship they destroyed, they lost 3 or 4 of their own. The mathematics of attrition were inexorably turning against them. Just hold the line for 5 more minutes, Caney replied. That's all we need. We will hold, Narak promised. For the freedom of every species in the galaxy, we will hold. But even as he spoke, Caney could see that the rebel corridor was collapsing. Valdris reinforcements were converging from across the system, and the surviving free ships were being overwhelmed by superior numbers and technology. 3 minutes to firing position, Dr. Chen called out. Reality Anchor approaching full charge. The Valdris had finally realized that something was wrong. Their sensors had detected the Retribution's unusual energy signature, and they were beginning to redirect their attention from the rebels to this mysterious new threat. Admiral, Thane said urgently, Valdris command ships are transmitting override codes to our false identification protocols. They know we're not who we claim to be. How long until they penetrate our deception? Perhaps 90 seconds. Caney looked at the tactical display one final time. The rebel fleets were dying around them, sacrificing themselves to buy humanity's weapon the time it needed to deploy. In 90 seconds, the Valdris would realize exactly what the Retribution was carrying, and every weapon in the system would focus on destroying them before they could fire. Dr. Chen, she said calmly, arm the Reality Anchor. We're going to get one shot at this, and it has to count. The weapon that could theoretically unmake matter itself began to hum with power that made the ship's hull vibrate like a struck bell. Around them, the largest battle in galactic history continued to rage. But Admiral Kane's attention was focused entirely on the golden planet ahead of them, Nexus Prime, the heart of an empire, the center of a civilization that had enslaved half the galaxy. In 60 seconds, they would discover whether human determination could overcome 1,000,000 years of Valdris supremacy. The Reality Anchor reached full power with a sound that seemed to come from the fabric of space itself. Every surface on the ESS Retribution vibrated with barely contained energy as the weapon prepared to unleash forces that could theoretically unravel the atomic bonds holding matter together. 14 seconds to optimal firing position, Dr. Chen announced, her voice steady, despite the magnitude of what they were attempting. All weapon systems are operating within acceptable parameters. Admiral Caney watched the tactical display as Valdris ships converged on their position from every direction. The alien vessels moved with lethal grace, their weapon systems powering up as they finally recognized the true nature of the threat approaching their homeworld. "Admiral," Commander Blake reported urgently, "Valdris Command Authority is transmitting system-wide alerts." "They know what we are." Translation? Caney asked. Commander Thane's face was grim as he interpreted the alien broadcasts. "They're calling us a terror weapon. Orders have been issued to destroy us at any cost, even if it means sacrificing their own ships to prevent us from reaching firing position." Through the viewport, Caney could see the beautiful blue-green world of Nexus Prime growing larger. Orbital habitats surrounded the planet like a crown of jewels, each one housing millions of beings from across the galaxy. The sight was breathtaking and terrifying, a reminder that their weapon would not discriminate between the oppressors and the oppressed. "Admiral," came the voice of Fleet Commander Narak over the communication system, "our fleet commanders report that Valdris forces are disengaging from our positions to intercept your vessel. You have perhaps 30 seconds before they reach firing range." The sacrifice was almost complete. The rebel fleets had fought themselves to near extinction to give humanity this one chance. And now the surviving ships were being ignored as every Valdris vessel raced to stop the reality anchor from firing. 20 seconds to optimal position, Dr. Chen called out. Weapon systems fully charged and ready to deploy. "Admiral," Lieutenant Palmer announced from sensors, "I'm reading massive energy buildups from the approaching Valdris ships. They're preparing to fire everything they have at us simultaneously." Caney made a quick calculation. The Valdris weapons would reach them approximately 10 seconds before they achieved optimal firing position. Their shields might absorb the first few hits, but concentrated fire from dozens of their most powerful warships would vaporize the retribution in seconds. "Dr. Chen, can we fire the reality anchor from our current position?" "Negative, Admiral. We need to be within 200,000 kilometers for the weapon to achieve planetary effectiveness. At our current distance, we might damage some orbital facilities, but the planet itself would survive." "Time to minimum effective range? 18 seconds. 8 seconds difference between survival and victory. 8 seconds that would determine whether humanity's desperate gamble would succeed or fail catastrophically." "All hands," Caney announced over the ship-wide communication system. "This is the Admiral. In 18 seconds, we will either save the galaxy from tyranny or die in the attempt. It has been an honor to serve with each of you." The first Valdris weapons fire reached them at precisely the moment Dr. Chen had predicted. The Retribution's shields flared brilliant white as they absorbed energy equivalent to a small star's output. The ship shuddered but held together, its exotic hull materials designed specifically to withstand the stresses of carrying a reality anchor. "Shields at 60%, reported Chief Engineer Rodriguez. "We can maybe take 2 more hits like that, but there wouldn't be just 2 more hits." Palmer's sensors showed over 50 Valdris ships converging on their position, each one capable of delivering devastating firepower. The next volley would include weapons that could crack planets. 10 seconds to minimum effective range, Dr. Chen announced. "Reality anchor ready to fire on your command." 5 seconds. Another massive wave of energy struck the Retribution, this time from multiple directions simultaneously. The ship's shields collapsed entirely and several hull breaches appeared as raw Valdris firepower began to eat through their armor. "Structural integrity failing," Rodriguez reported. "We've got fires on 6 decks and the main reactor is starting to fluctuate." 2 seconds. "Admiral," Dr. Chen shouted over the sound of alarms and emergency systems, "we're at minimum effective range. Firing now." The reality anchor deployed in absolute silence. There was no dramatic flash of light, no explosive release of energy that human senses could perceive. Instead, space itself seemed to hold its breath as forces beyond comprehension reached out toward Nexus Prime. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. The Valdris ships continued their assault on the dying Retribution, their weapons tearing through the human vessel's hull like paper. Around them, the massive orbital habitats continued their stately rotation around the beautiful planet below. Then reality began to unravel. It started at the quantum level, with the strong nuclear force that held atoms together, suddenly becoming unstable within a sphere of space centered on Nexus Prime. The effect spread outward at the speed of light, creating a wave of destruction that made the Valdris weapons seem like toys in comparison. The first orbital habitat simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, a massive structure housing 10 million beings, and the next moment its atoms had been convinced to forget how to remain bound together. The habitat didn't explode or collapse. It simply stopped being solid matter and dispersed into its component particles. "By all the gods," Commander Thane whispered, staring at the display in horror and awe. "It actually works." The reality distortion wave continued to expand, consuming everything in its path with inexorable efficiency. Valdris warships that had survived battles across centuries of conquest found their hulls coming apart at the molecular level. Defensive satellites armed with planet-killing weapons dissolved into clouds of free-floating atoms. And then the wave reached Nexus Prime itself. The planet's shields, powerful enough to withstand the combined assault of 100 fleets, might as well have been made of paper. The reality anchor didn't care about energy barriers or defensive systems. It simply convinced matter that the concept of structural integrity was a temporary arrangement that could be safely ignored. Nexus Prime, the heart of a million-year-old empire, began to come apart atom by atom. "Admiral," Dr. Chen reported in a shaking voice, "the quantum cascade is self-sustaining now. The planet's own mass is feeding the reaction." Caney watched in fascination and horror as an entire world died. This wasn't the violent explosion of a nuclear weapon or the dramatic collapse of a dying star. This was something far more fundamental and terrifying. The very laws of physics were being selectively suspended, causing matter to simply forget how to exist in solid form. The death of Nexus Prime took exactly 17 minutes. When it was over, the golden sun that had warmed the Empire's capital for millions of years shone down on empty space where a planet had once orbited. Even the debris was gone, dispersed into component atoms that would eventually drift apart and join the cosmic background radiation. "Sensors confirmed total planetary destruction," Palmer reported, his voice barely audible. "Nexus Prime no longer exists, but the reality anchor's effects extended far beyond the destruction of a single world." The quantum disruption had interfaced with the Valdris Empire's communication networks exactly as the architect records had predicted. Across the galaxy, quantum relay stations were failing in cascade reactions as the fundamental forces they depended upon became unstable. "Admiral," Communications Officer Torres announced, "I'm monitoring communication traffic throughout the system. The Valdris command networks are collapsing. Their remaining ships are receiving no orders from central authority." Indeed, the Valdris fleet's coordinated assault on the Retribution had faltered completely. Individual ship commanders, cut off from the hierarchical command structure that had defined their empire for a million years, seemed unable to decide what to do next. Some continued attacking, but others had stopped firing entirely, apparently waiting for orders that would never come. "This is Fleet Commander Narak to Admiral Caney," came a transmission from the surviving rebel ships. "We are reading the complete destruction of Nexus Prime and the collapse of Valdris command networks throughout the galaxy." "Admiral, what have you done?" Caney looked around the bridge of the Retribution. Her ship was dying around her, its hull breached in dozens of places and its life support systems failing. Half her crew was dead or injured, and the reality anchor had burned out completely during its single use. But they had succeeded. The Valdris Empire, which had terrorized the galaxy for a million years, was effectively dead. Without their command structure and communication networks, the scattered Valdris forces would be unable to coordinate any response or maintain control over their conquered territories. "Commander Narak," she replied, "we have just given the galaxy its freedom back. What happens next is up to every species willing to fight for it." As the ESS Retribution systems finally failed completely, Admiral Caney allowed herself a moment of quiet satisfaction. Earth's final command to the galaxy had been delivered with devastating effectiveness. Do not cross Terran space, and do not underestimate the determination of a species that refuses to kneel. 6 months after the destruction of Nexus Prime, Admiral Zephyr Caney stood on the observation deck of the rebuilt ESS Defiance, watching as ships from 100 different species gathered in what was once the heart of the Valdris Empire. The space where Nexus Prime had orbited was now filled with the largest diplomatic gathering in galactic history. The evacuation from the dying Retribution had been a miracle in itself. Commander Narak's rebel fleet had rescued the surviving human crew just minutes before the ship's reactor finally exploded, taking the spent reality anchor with it. Caney still bore scars from the radiation exposure, but she was alive to see the consequences of their desperate gambit. "Admiral," Commander Blake reported, approaching with a datapad containing the latest intelligence reports. The Galactic Freedom Coalition has grown to include 412 member species. Another 57 former Valdris territories have declared independence in the past week alone. The transformation had been remarkable to witness. Without the central authority of Nexus Prime, the vast Valdris Empire had collapsed like a house of cards. Some outlying territories had attempted to maintain imperial control, but without the communication networks and military coordination that had made the empire possible, these efforts were failing one by one. What about Earth? Caney asked. Any word from Admiral Cross? Regular reports, ma'am. The Valdris advance fleet that remained in our solar system surrendered 3 days after the news of Nexus Prime's destruction reached them, apparently without orders from their high command. The local commanders decided that discretion was the better part of valor. Caney smiled, imagining Cross's reaction to the aliens who had come to enslave humanity, suddenly asking for safe passage home. Earth's orbital defenses, which had been built to hold off an invasion, were now protecting alien refugees who had nowhere else to go. Admiral Caney, came a familiar voice from behind them. Commander Thane of the Ethereal Coalition approached, but he was no longer alone. Representatives from dozens of species accompanied him, each one bearing the insignia of worlds that had recently thrown off their chains. Commander Thane, I see the coalition is growing. Indeed, we are no longer the Ethereal Coalition, but the founding members of something much larger. The Galactic Freedom Alliance now represents over 60% of the former Valdris territories. The assembled beings were a remarkable sight. Tall, graceful ethereals stood beside crystalline entities whose bodies seemed to be made of living mineral. Aquatic species in environmental suits mingled with gaseous beings contained in specialized chambers. The diversity of life in the galaxy was staggering, and for the first time in a million years, all of it was free to develop without imperial interference. There is something we must discuss, Admiral. Thane continued, his expression becoming more serious. The question of what happens next. Caney raised an eyebrow. I thought that was obvious. The free species govern themselves, trade freely, and make sure nothing like the Valdris Empire ever rises again. That's the ideal, certainly, but there are practical considerations. Thane gestured to the massive gathering of ships visible through the viewport. Many species are asking the same question. Who will provide the leadership to prevent chaos from replacing tyranny? It was a valid concern. The sudden collapse of galactic authority had created a power vacuum that could easily be filled by warlords, pirates, or ambitious species seeking to establish their own empires. Freedom was meaningless if it led to anarchy and war. The Alliance is proposing a new form of galactic government, Thane continued. Not an empire ruled by a single species, but a true confederation where every world has a voice. We want to offer humanity a founding membership in this new order. Caney considered the implications. Earth had never sought galactic domination, but their role in destroying the Valdris Empire gave them enormous influence among the freed species. Many worlds were looking to humanity for leadership, seeing them as the species brave enough to challenge impossible odds. What kind of role are we talking about? Blake asked. We propose that Earth become the capital world of the new confederation, Thane explained. Not as rulers, but as coordinators. Your species has demonstrated both the courage to fight tyranny and the wisdom to value freedom. Many worlds would feel safer with humanity, providing oversight rather than attempting to govern themselves from scratch. The irony wasn't lost on Caney. Humanity had gone from being threatened with extinction to being offered leadership of half the galaxy. The species that had nearly been enslaved was now being asked to help others avoid the same fate. I'll need to discuss this with Earth's leadership, Caney replied. This isn't a decision I can make alone. Of course. But Admiral, there's something else you should know. Thane activated a holographic display showing a star map of the galaxy. Large sections were highlighted in different colors, showing the current political situation. The green areas represent worlds that have joined our Freedom Alliance. The blue sections are independent species maintaining neutrality. But look at the red zones. Caney studied the display with growing concern. Approximately 20% of the former Valdris territory was marked in red, concentrated in several large clusters throughout the galaxy. Valdris Loyalist territories, Thane explained. Species and worlds that benefited from the old imperial system, and refuse to accept its collapse. They're attempting to maintain imperial control in their regions, often through brutal suppression of independence movements. How organized are they? More than we initially hoped. Without central command, they can't coordinate large-scale operations, but they're still dangerous to local populations. Some of them have access to Valdris military technology and aren't hesitant about using it against civilian targets. Blake pointed to one particularly large red cluster. What about this region? It's enormous. That's the hegemony of Sacred Order, Thane said grimly, led by a species called the Dorani, who served as the Valdris Empire's primary enforcers for the past 50,000 years. They've declared themselves the rightful inheritors of imperial authority and are actively attempting to reconquer their neighbors. The challenges were becoming clearer. The destruction of the Valdris Empire hadn't ended the threat of galactic tyranny. It had simply broken the threat into smaller, more manageable pieces that would need to be dealt with individually. There's also the question of the Valdris themselves, Thane continued. Not all members of their species supported the Empire's policies. Many were simply born into a system they had no choice but to serve. There are entire Valdris colonies asking for protection from loyalist forces that want to punish them for betraying the Empire. Caney felt the weight of galactic responsibility settling on her shoulders. The reality anchor had solved the immediate threat, but it had also created a complex political situation that could take decades to resolve. "Admiral," came a transmission from the communication station. "We're receiving a priority message from Earth. Admiral Cross wants to speak with you immediately." The main screen activated, showing Cross aboard the orbital command station above Earth. Behind him, Caney could see representatives from dozens of human colonies throughout local space. "Zephyr," Cross began, "I've been monitoring the situation in the former Valdris territories. It's becoming clear that our work isn't finished, sir. Earth's government has been in emergency session for the past week, discussing our response to the galactic situation. We've reached a unanimous decision." Cross paused, his expression showing the weight of historic responsibility. "Humanity accepts the offer to help coordinate galactic freedom efforts. Earth will serve as the capital of the new Confederation, but only under strict conditions." "What conditions, sir?" "No species, including humanity, will hold permanent authority over others. The Confederation will be built on principles of equality, self-determination, and mutual cooperation. Any world that wants to leave can do so freely. And most importantly, we will never allow another empire like the Valdris to rise again." Caney felt a surge of pride in her species. Even with the opportunity to rule the galaxy, humanity was choosing the harder path of genuine democracy and freedom. "There's one more thing, Admiral," Cross continued. "We're establishing a new fleet dedicated to protecting galactic freedom. Ships from dozens of species operating under Confederation authority to respond to threats against democratic governments. We want you to command it." "Sir, I'm honored, but this isn't a request, Zephyr. You're the person who fired the shot heard round the galaxy. When you speak, every free species listens. We need that kind of authority in the fight against the remaining Imperial holdouts," as Admiral Caney accepted her new command. She looked out at the gathering of free species surrounding the empty space where Nexus Prime had once stood. The reality anchor had destroyed more than just a planet and an empire. It had shattered 1,000,000 years of galactic tyranny and created the possibility of something unprecedented. A galaxy where freedom was the rule rather than the exception. Earth's final command to the Valdris Empire had been simple: do not cross Terran space. But humanity's message to the galaxy was even more profound. Freedom is worth any price, and those who would enslave others will find that some species refuse to kneel. The age of empires was end,